This is episode 45 of the Construction Leading Edge podcast. My name is Todd DeWalt. This is the podcast brought to you by ConstructionLeadingEdge.com, and my job here is to help you grow your leadership skills, grow your business, and grow your income. Today's episode is an interview with a guy named David King, who started a business back in 2015. He has a very unique background, and some might say that he really has no business starting a construction business. But he did, and he's succeeding, and he's doing very well. His story is a very interesting one, and I think you'll enjoy it. I think if you're contemplating starting a business, you're going to get a lot out of this, and you're going to learn something from him. Now, this episode's a little different. It is part interview and then part coaching. So at the end of this interview, I gave David the opportunity to ask me and you some questions that he needs to get help with. So there's an opportunity for you to get involved in the conversation and jump in and help David answer some of the questions and deal with some of the challenges that he's facing as a new business startup. So listen to the end for all the details on how you can get in on that conversation. Now, before we get to the interview, I want to share a resource with you, something I've put together. But first, a question. Question for you. What is one of the largest productivity killers in the construction industry that is reducible, yet hardly anybody's doing anything about? No, it's not the labor shortage. It's not about architects or owners. I'm not talking about millennials texting on the job site, believe it or not. I am talking about unresolved conflict. And if you've listened to this podcast, then you'll know that this is something that I've been hammering on for several months now, and it's because it's a huge deal. It's been a huge deal in my career. It was a huge deal in my experience, in my business, and it's something that I want to spend some energy on because I think it's really going to help you as well. So this unresolved conflict, it's either between two people that work together, maybe it's a manager and a direct report, a general contractor and a subcontractor, etc. Now, early in my career, I worked with an old project manager named Daryl. And Daryl didn't exactly have the best conflict resolution skills, you might say. In fact, he bragged about firing every carpenter in the union that was working on one particular project. I worked with Daryl on a project renovating the lobbies of a high-rise office building, and for some reason, Daryl got sideways with the drywall supervisor on the job. He even said things like, "I hate this guy, and I'm going to stick it to that guy every chance I get." Now, this was obviously not good for the project, certainly wasn't good for the drywall sub, and it wasn't even good for Daryl. The truth is, Daryl made a lot of mistakes when it came to dealing with conflict on his project. Now, I've seen a lot of mistakes when handling conflict on job sites. A lot of them were mistakes that I made. I've seen a lot of mistakes other people made. And believe it or not, there's a lot of research that says that unresolved conflict is a huge problem in business today. And for that matter, beyond that, it's also a huge problem in marriages and families too. So I've put together a list of 41 mistakes to avoid when dealing with conflict at work. And some of these could probably work. I've had some people say, hey, these work pretty well when dealing with my teenagers. No. So here's a couple of the mistakes that I want to share with you that are on this list of the 41 mistakes. Number one, having a combat mentality. If you go in thinking that there must be a winner and a loser, then that's a mistake, and you are approaching this thing all wrong. Number 14, this is one of my favorites, speculating about motives. Speculating about motives. The reality is you can judge facts, but you can only speculate or guess why someone did something or why they didn't do something. And we all know what happens when you assume, right? Number 3 on the list is avoiding conflict. Here's some interesting statistics. A recent survey found that 35% of managers, get this, they would rather jump out of a plane than deal with conflict. Here's an interesting one. 27% would rather shave their head for charity, and 8% would rather eat bugs than deal with conflict. So avoiding conflict is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. So you need to get your hands on this list of 41 mistakes to avoid when dealing with conflict, and then figure out which ones you and even your supervisors could be making. This would be a really good thing to hand out to all your project managers, people managers, your supervisors, or the foreman. Hand it out to them. Make sure they read it. It might even make for a good toolbox talk. You never know. Might be good, something good to go over with your folks. Get your hands on this by going to constructionleadingedge.com/mistakes. Put your email address in there, and I will send you this PDF download with 41 mistakes to avoid when dealing with conflict at work. Now, without further ado, let's get to the interview with David King. Hope you enjoy. All right, David King, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, full disclosure here, David and I worked together for several years, a few years ago. And so let's just jump into your story. So David, tell us, what are you doing right now? Tell us a little bit about your business and what you do. And then we'll work our way into that because you've got a pretty interesting backstory.
Sure. So my business is RollTheLex Painting. So basically, I've painted a few different, areas, if you will. I got banisters, some stairs, things like that. But basically what I focus on is basically residential interior painting, really sticking to the basic stuff, ceilings, walls, trim, doors, and then cabinets. I really found a pretty good niche with painting cabinets. Minor drywall work here and there. There have been times where I've bit off a little more than I could chew, and I have learned from those experiences. But I've done a few commercial things, but those are pretty few and far between. So basically, residential interior. Once it warms up, probably get to exterior, and I got some decks lined up for April.
Gotcha. So how long have you been doing this full time?
Since started the company in June of last year, so 8 months.
Okay, so June 2015,
Yep.
About 8 months, and so things are going pretty well.
Yeah, they are. It's been a learning experience since I started it, which everybody told me there would be a learning curve. Basically, after 8 months, I've kind of narrowed it down to the things that I really feel comfortable with, trying not to branch out too much from that, and just basically sticking with, kind of what I told you a minute ago. Ceilings, walls, trim, minor drywall stuff, cabinets, and sticking to the stuff that's gone well so far.
Gotcha. So prior to starting your business back in June of 2015, you didn't do painting for a living. Is that correct?
No, I didn't paint at all.
All right. So let's go back to, let's just set this up. You're a family guy. How many kids do you have?
We've got 7.
7 kids. All right. You're a young guy. So how old are you?
Yeah, 36.
36, 7 kids. All right. And what, let's see. What did you set out to be? You took some training in counseling. Is that right?
I was thinking about my background, and it's so diverse. It's almost funny. I've got a bachelor's. I got a BS in psychology.
Okay.
I've done some master's work on a Master of Divinity at Southern Seminary. I've got a biblical counseling certification, independent from all the school stuff. I was a youth pastor. Then I cooked at Cracker Barrel. Then I worked at Leak for 6 years. I think I'm actually certified as a referee too for high school basketball. But I never used that one.
Right. All right. So you mentioned Leak, and that was the name of the company that David and I worked together at. What did you do there at Leak?
I was the main camera operator, basically, and a supervisor of the crew. So basically in charge of cleaning, inspecting the sewer pipes, and then turning in those inspections to any municipality we worked in, Lexington, Frankfort, Louisville, things like that.
Gotcha. All right. So now let's talk about the circumstances that surrounded your transition from being a sewer camera operator and supervisor to starting your own painting business. What happened back in middle part of 2015 that led you to start your own business?
Yeah. Well, I mean, basically the hours and the travel and the uncertainty, it really starting to take a toll on my family. My wife was pregnant with our 7th kid. She also has had Lyme disease, so her health was in pretty bad shape. So never knowing where I was going to be or really when I could come home, when I would be home, when I needed to be at work the next day. Are we working Saturday? Are we working Thursday? Are we working night shift? Just the uncertainty, and then really I kind of reached the ceiling of where I could go. I had hooked up or rewired 3 different trucks there for different camera purposes. I was supervisor of the crew, and really, if you were to look at the way it was set up, the company, basically, unless somebody quit or whatever, had really hit as high as I was going to go, and I was just, it was time to move on. I'd been there 6 years. It was just time to go.
Yeah. So I guess we don't need to get into the details of the transition of why you left or how you left, but let's talk about the circumstances that led to you starting the business. How did you get into painting?
Well, and this is one of the other jobs I forgot to mention to you when I was talking about background. I also drove for Uber and Lyft here in Lexington, and I'd go to Louisville occasionally. So our plan was when I left Leak Eliminators, the plan was to move down to Nashville. I've got family down in Nashville. We really didn't have a whole lot holding us here in Lexington, and you can make pretty good money driving Uber and Lyft throughout the day in Nashville. So I looked for a few jobs down in Nashville. Had planned to go down there and drive Uber full time. So we put our house on the market, and in 14 days, our house showed 11 times, and we didn't even get an offer. And it was at a pretty good selling time. I mean, it was in May, maybe late April, May. It was at a pretty good selling time. So during that time, I painted probably about half our house. And it's funny because the whole rest of our house, my wife has painted. And then I painted about half of it. It looked okay. I asked our realtor what he thought. I said, man, do you think I could make money doing this? He goes, yeah, I think you could. It looks pretty good. I'd become friends with the guys down at the local paint store. I said, so what do you guys think? Could you make money doing this? And they said, well, yeah, you could. So from what I'd heard about the painting market, I've heard it's, I just kind of littered with guys who, untrustworthy, people don't feel comfortable with them in their house, kind of things of that nature. So I thought, you know what? I think I'm a pretty decent guy. I'm not weird to have in the house. I could learn to paint, and started an LLC, and that was about it.
So how'd you get your first customer?
It had to have been somebody I knew. I believe it was a set of bookshelves. It was a set of bookshelves in Frankfurt of somebody I knew. And basically after that, it's been taking it to Facebook, and that's really where it's gone from there. Post a picture here. Hey, I did this. Hey, I can do this. Hey, would you do this? And really the biggest traction for me getting business has been my wife. She is on every mom's board, wife's board on Facebook. She knows everybody. And if it weren't for her, probably wouldn't have a business.
All right, so let's talk about Facebook. A lot of people think Facebook's a complete waste of time, especially from a business standpoint, unless you like to watch cat videos or you're into politics. How exactly, let's dig into how you use Facebook to get business. What are some of the strategies you're using that are working for you right now?
Well, when I first started the page, because what I did when I came up with my name, RollTheLex, it was kind of a play off of, if anybody's from Lexington, there's a big local initiative around here. People use hashtags on Twitter, share the Lex or local Lex. And that's big with the crowd that's from here, is doing things local. So I kind of tried to play off of that with my name. And then I went and took every domain or whatever I could think of. I grabbed an email with the name, a website with the name, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything, just to kind of lock up that name and that market in case it ever caught on. So basically the way I use Facebook is I've got a page with my company that's just dedicated to painting stuff. I don't post anything personal, nothing political, religious, anything like that. It's just for painting. When I get a job completed, I'll put some before and after pictures, and then I'll share that, or I'll post it and then I'll share it off my personal page, and then the plan is, to use hashtags that other people would follow. Share the Lex, painting, cabinetry. Use those hashtags, so if other people are clicking on hashtags, then it will kind of connect the two. Where it really turns out to be a big benefit is when other people will share those posts. And I can see different things that will be popular and won't. Like cabinetry is really popular. I'll post a picture of cabinets. I'll get 12 or 1,300 people look at that post. And I think one of the keys is just knowing the audience, knowing who you're posting for, and honestly, knowing what hashtags are for. Because if you're on Twitter or Facebook, a lot of times people will put a hashtag with a really long sentence, but really hashtags are for connecting with people that are thinking about the same thing.
So who is your audience? Are they male, female? Do you have some demographics that you've figured out?
I would say it's people probably my age to older. I'm usually dealing with the wife because she's the one at home. So if I come to give an estimate and or come to look at a job, it's usually dealing with a wife, and everybody is probably about my age to older, and they're all in that kind of the moms group, soccer family, mid-30s type range. That's about where it's kind of fallen.
Gotcha. So what are the most important things that you've gleaned from your interaction with your customers? I mean, is it about cost? Is it about speed? Is it about, what are they really concerned about? What are the things that you focus on when you're talking to folks that are important to them?
Well, I usually, it's all the reviews, because I've several people have left reviews on my Facebook page, and it's funny because I've gotten more reviews about who I am than the job that I did painting. Several of them say, "Hey, he's cool to have in your house. He worked around my schedule. He was nice to my dog. He didn't kick him out of the way."
He has great hair. Got a really cool beard.
It is the beard. But what I've really found out is speed and cost have never really been an issue. People will bring it up occasionally, and if it's just too big a difference, that is what it is. But I've found that character, and if I can meet somebody first and they can meet me, that will sell. I'm selling me before I'm selling the fact that I can cut a straight line on your ceiling.
So would you say that really the paint on the wall is not the biggest thing people are buying? Is it, what I'm hearing you say is that how you put paint on the wall or what the finished product looks like is not necessarily the biggest thing, but it's the experience?
I would give it 50-50.
Okay.
Because I would say if it's a toss-up between, say, me and two other companies, and we each paint equally the same, it's going to come down to who is the customer more comfortable being around. Mm-hmm. That's what I've found. So there have been several estimates, for example, I've given, like I just shoot an estimate over the phone because I'm not able to get out there. And people politely decline to say, "Oh, that's more than we were thinking." And I've thought in my head, if I would have just gone there and met them, it might have been different.
How hard is it to stand out above the crowd of your competition? What's the general, what's the average painter look like? Whether it's appearance, punctuality, meanness to the dog, lack of beard. Is it hard for you to stand out among the competition, or do you think it's pretty easy?
I think if you want it, and I think if you know where you're trying to go with it, I think it's pretty easy. Another thing I've found is I communicate with my customers pretty regularly. If a job's going to go longer than we originally thought, I let them know. If I'm going to have to come back, say, a week later because I had something else on the schedule, I let them know. If I'm running late and caught up in traffic for a snowstorm, hey, on my way, be there soon. Or hey, my kid has a basketball game at 4:30. I'm probably going to get out of here around 4. I always keep them in the loop. We talk through things, so it's not like I'm not going to just not show up. I've heard tons of stories. People say things like, yeah, I was listing my house on the market, and I called my painter because he wasn't there, and he just called me. When he answered the phone, he just said, "Oh, I decided I didn't need the job, so I didn't show up."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've heard tons of stories like that. So basically, I think the thing that separates me is I'm trying to grow a business. I'm trying to make a name. I'd like to get my business to the point where I'm impacting, I'm able to do more things in the community and for the community. And I really want to push that avenue rather than just make a buck. I think that's the difference.
So what kind of stuff do you have in mind to impact the community?
I don't even know.
Just something.
I'd like to be involved in the local initiatives, when there's like street fairs downtown, be there, volunteer time, coaching basketball, with my kids, get involved. I've thought about it like an adopt a highway, just trying to get back in those certain areas. I've tried to get in touch with different business owners, small business guys, and just make relationships that way.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let me shift gears a little bit. You'd mentioned that in your previous job, you didn't feel, I don't know if you used this word, but the security was there. The security wasn't there. The consistency wasn't there. You didn't know when you would work, didn't have a real sense of security. A lot of people would say that a job working for somebody else is more secure than having your own business. How do you feel about that?
I would agree with that, but I think it depends on how you define security. At all my other jobs working for somebody else, unless, you had a week like this week where it's too cold to even run a vac truck. Yeah, you're going to be working. You might work 35 hours. You might work 55 hours. I would, in that sense, as long as you're going to be making some kind of money, I say, yeah, it's more secure to do that. If you're able to take the gamble, if you're able to just jump out there and start your own business, I do think you'll make more money, in the long run, depending on what you were doing. The security for me comes in knowing that if my kid has a basketball game, I'm not going to miss my kid's basketball game. If my wife is sick, I don't have to worry about, getting in trouble or getting fired. I call up homeowners, say, hey, my wife's sick. I need to stay home and help her. So in terms of financial security, yeah, I think working for somebody else is definitely more secure, at least at the beginning. But in terms of the other stuff, I can be with my family when I want to. I can go to a game, come back and paint a room, then go to another game. I can do things like that. The trade-off was worth it for me.
So do you feel more secure now about your financial situation than you did when you were an employee?
I do, because I control what the money is. I could bid a job for whatever I wanted. Obviously I'm not going to do that, for some astronomical price, but I'm not locked into, oh, we're going to pay you $20 an hour, and I could work there for 10 years and I'll never get a raise.
Right.
There's no, that's, you're buying the same pair of shoes every June. You're eating the same thing for dinner every day. Kids, if you want to go to college, good luck. I don't have a chance at making more money. With this, it really depends on me. I can make as much as I need to, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. All right. So, in my opinion, there are a lot of people's mindset holds them back a lot, whether it's advancing in their current job or starting a new business or growing their own business. What have been some of the mindset or paradigm shifts that you've had to deal with since starting the business? Like the way you think about something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, one thing I think of is how to work more economically somewhere, and basically how to get a quality job done faster rather than charge more. Because there are some jobs where you can't just go in and paint a bedroom for $500. It's usually not going to happen. So if I'm thinking to myself, oh, I need X amount of money, it's I've had to shift from, okay, this is what I'm going to charge, and I'm going to draw a hard line, to, okay, so what are some ways can I get this done faster? Can I use a larger roller cover? Can I put the paint on thicker? Can I use a different kind of paint? Should I have primed it? Things like that. Just trying to think outside the box. So instead of more money, less time.
Okay. What about like any other mindset issues, like personal, how you thought about yourself, or how you thought about business, how you thought about customers? Was there anything like that that you've? Well, let me ask a different way. Here's a better way to ask that question. What has surprised you the most about running a business? This may flush out some of the beliefs that you had. So what are some of the things that have surprised you the most about running your own business?
The learning curve. The learning curve was more surprising than I thought. I knew there would be one, and I talked to people that did this before I kind of just jumped into it, even though I really just jumped into it. So the learning curve and figuring out what works for me and what doesn't, what to turn down, what not to. Homeowners, every homeowner and business owner I've worked for, unless they've written bad things about me on Facebook that I don't know about, 99% of the time, everybody has been gracious. They've been kind, offered you coffee. A surprising amount of people offer you alcohol, which is a little odd considering I'm painting their house. So we don't ever take that route, but it happens pretty often. But as far as that question goes, nothing's really surprised me because I didn't know what to expect.
Gotcha. All right, so let's talk about customers. Did you have, or do you still have any reservations about asking for business? Giving people a price? When you hand over that quote, do you have anxiety about giving an estimate, asking for money for your work, anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if I should or not, but I usually just try and swallow it, and just when we're done, just say, "Hey, I'm done," and just I don't ever say it's time to pay up. But I've never, in other things that I've done, I've never been comfortable with money just changing hands like that. It's something I've had to get used to. But I guess that's just the nature of the beast. When it's you and it's only you, and you got to pay the mortgage.
Right. I heard an interesting talk by a gentleman. His name is Rabbi Daniel Lapin, and I heard him on Dave Ramsey's podcast. But he has a really interesting. He actually wrote a book about like biblical principles around business and money, and he's got a really interesting way of talking about money, and it kind of takes the emotion out of it, because I know a lot of people are anxious about asking for money, whether it's giving the estimate, putting a number, assigning a number to their time or their value, and then ultimately asking for that money. But I'll put a link in to try to find Daniel Lapin's talk about that. But really good stuff. So here's a last question for you, and then we're going to shift into give you an opportunity to ask some questions of myself and the audience, see if we can help you out. What kind of feedback did you get from friends and family when you said, "Hey, I think I'm gonna paint for a living"?
It was surprisingly positive. I think a few
Really?
people told me, that it would be difficult starting a business, and they said, you'll work way more than you ever did. And I thought, no, I won't. Well, they were right. There have been several 70-hour weeks, um, that were just to break even and make it. Um, I figured out those are the weeks that you learn from, and a lot of the mistakes I made my first year, first year of doing this, I really liken it to a kid walking in front of a swing. And a lot of these things take one time. It takes a kid one time to walk in front of a swing and get leveled, and you don't do it again.
That's right.
Most of these things are pretty good swing analogies. They take one time, and
So
that's never
what?
happening again.
So what's one of those get clotheslined by a swing incidents?
Thinking I could take wallpaper off a kitchen in 2 to 3 hours.
Oh,
That was a big clothesline.
yeah. Everything went black there for a while, huh? You came back. Um, so would you say that those incidents, are they unknowns, like trying something for the first time? Are they difficult customers? I mean, if you look back, are you seeing a theme for those things that you say, I'm never going to do that again?
Oh, sure. The theme's never been a difficult customer. It's always been I've never done that before, and I ask advice from several. I've got a local paint store who I lean on, pretty regularly. Their paint rep, um, their paint rep at More Innovations here in Nicholasville. He's become one of my best friends. So usually what I'll do is if I'm encountered with something I've never done before, I I'll go to YouTube, and find one or two different videos that have a pretty good amount of views. I'm not going to look at the guy that's got like 500 views, but some of these guys are up in the hundreds of thousands of views. So I'll take a couple of ways that those guys do it, and then I'll call up my paint rep. I'll be like, hey, here's what I saw. Here's what I'm thinking. Is this right? And he'll kind of level it back. But there's just some of those things, just by talking to me over the phone. I mean, he can't tell me what's really going to happen.
Mhm.
So it's just I've had about 3 jobs like that where it's been as soon as I get my head above water, then I get into another one and I go back underwater.
Mm.
So that's really why I told you what I said at the beginning of the podcast. I've kind of narrowed it down to sticking with what I know for now. I know interior rooms fairly well. I know cabinets fairly well. Really kind of trying to stick in a groove for a little bit, because I just I need to be in a groove rather than underwater. And I think I'll take on those newer things. Where before I was looking at them as, oh, I need the work, and now I'm looking at them as, the other things are going to keep coming because I'm proving to do them well. When I have time and money to possibly spend, then maybe I'll dabble in things I really don't know about.
So maybe dabble in the unknown when it's optional, not when you feel like you have to.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, when you get yourself, I found out when you get yourself into learning something with little capital to learn on, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, that reminds me of an analogy I heard. I can't remember who said this, but the analogy was, let's say you're on an old ship, and you've got some enemy ship that's closing in on you, and you have cannons, and you only have so much gunpowder. Well, you can either aim your cannon at that other ship and then fire one cannonball and then hope for the best, which is like trying something new for the first time when it absolutely has to work. There's no room for failure. Kind of desperate situation. And what this person said was, well, instead of firing a cannonball, take a little bit of gunpowder and fire a bullet. Put it in a gun and fire a bullet to get the range, get the distance, and get it worked out. So use a little bit of your gunpowder and then fire the cannonball, which I thought that was a pretty good analogy. Instead of throwing all your resources after something and using all your powder, there's the old saying, you have to save your powder. And a lot of people get in the situation where they're like, yeah, we'll try something, and they step into something that's just too big, and it just takes all their powder.
Yeah, well, and the worst is when you use all your powder and accidentally point the cannon downward into your own ship.
True, definitely. All right, so now let's shift gears and let's see how we can help you out, David. I want to talk about some of the challenges you're facing, and so for you folks listening, what we're going to do is I'm going to make a post, set up a post on my Facebook page, and I'll have a link in the show notes for that, which you'll find out where that is at the end of the podcast. And I want you to share your thoughts. If you've got questions for David on how he's done something, or if you have answers to David's questions, or you have advice to him, help him out. All right. He's got a beard to maintain. He's got a business. He has 7 kids, a wife. I mean, let's try to help this guy out. So I want to work together here and try to help David with these challenges. So I don't have all the answers, but I'm confident that among the group we can come up with something that'll be helpful. So David, what's one of the challenges that you're facing right now that would move the needle for you if you could get the answer to it?
Probably the biggest thing would be how to give. I'm trying to think of a good way to word it. How to give an accurate estimate that hits, a fair market value for what you're doing, but without being undercut by somebody, or by a business or a person who's not paying taxes, paying their guys cash under the table, because those guys can go significantly lower than I can, even though it's just me. I've set this up to be a, legit business. How do you combat that and still come out with a profit?
So is it how do you put together an accurate estimate that will make you competitive? Excuse me. So how do you put together an accurate estimate so you can compete with the other guys, or is it how do you fashion your business so that, or how do you put together an estimate that'll make you money? Which one of those two is your question? Because I think the answers are different.
Okay. Can we use both of them in 2 separate questions?
Sure. So let's start with how do you put together an accurate estimate that will help you make money? So let's start with that one, and then we'll take the how do you compete as the second one. So here's my thoughts. Here are my thoughts on the putting together an accurate estimate. So the key to that is having data. You got to have some data points to base your estimate on. Initially you're just gonna guess, and so my thoughts are, now that you've been at this for a while, my recommendation would be take those. Let's say if you did an 80-20 analysis on your business based on the 80-20 principle, 80% of your revenue is going to come from a minority of the work you do. So it may be, you just need to figure out what the few types of work are that result in the majority of your revenue. Maybe it's kitchen painting or bathrooms or bedrooms. I don't know what that is, but it's probably not like exterior porch swings or some little extraneous thing. It's, if you looked at, all right, most of my jobs, most of my revenue comes from painting this. Is it trim, ceilings, walls, etc.? Figure out where the bulk of your revenue is coming from. And then on the jobs you're working on, start to track your production. Track all of your activities on the jobs. So, how much actual painting time do you have on the job? Because if you're working in a house, I'm sure you can't show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and work till 8 o'clock at night. How much setup time do you have? How much cleanup time do you have at the end of each day? And then start tracking, well, how many square feet of wall, if bedroom walls are one of your primary revenue generators, how many square feet of wall did I get done today? And figure out, get an average production rate for those things, and start tracking that data. And then that'll help you put together a good estimate, and you'll know, you'll at least have some data points to base it on to know this is what it's actually this is how much time it's taking me to paint these items, and you can track your material cost as well. And then also look at how much productive time do you have, because if when you meet with a homeowner and they say, well, you're not going to be able to start till 9 o'clock in the morning and the kids get home at 3:30, then you know what you're up against, and you'll have some idea of what your setup and cleanup time is going to be, and that's going to cut your work time pretty short. So start to track that information, and after a while, you'll have data on the most important things, and then you can put your estimate together based on that, and that'll help you know this is what I got to have to make money. And it'll also help answer the next question is, do you even want to compete with the undercut competition? Because if you're not going to make money on it, then you don't, unless you're a philanthropist and you just want to donate money, if you're not going to make money, you don't need to be involved. You might as well just pass on it. And the other part of that, so you want to track your production to have some good information to know this is how much I can get done. And then the tricky part, which I don't know that anybody can answer, is you've got to figure out what's your time worth. You got to put maybe it's a lower limit, at least establish a lower limit of I can paint X number of square feet per hour, and my lower limit on what I'm willing to invest my time into is at this number of dollars per hour. And then the other part of that is what you're doing a really good job of, I think, and that's figuring out your market. And you want to, as I heard Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, he said, you want to be competing against idiots, which I think is good advice because it makes it really easy to stand out. And I think you're doing a good job there. You want to go to the markets where it's really not all about cost. And so I would also you need to bundle your marketing and presentation into this category of, because it's all about, you're going to figure out how much can I get done, and that's going to help you come up with a price. But then it sounds like the presentation's a big deal. Timeliness and presentation, how you actually present that estimate, sounds like that's a big deal as well. And if you get into the right market and you build up that word of mouth and referral business, which it looks like you're doing a really good job of. By the way, you guys need to check out David's Facebook page, and he mentioned the reviews. It's like all 5-star reviews. And I think if you're looking for what successful word of mouth marketing looks like, you need to check out David's page. I'll have a link in the show notes for that. So there's a few thoughts on that. So it's not just one thing or the other. I think it's a kind of a mashup of a few different things. Track your production so you got some good data to figure out what you need to charge, and then go after the right market. And what you're already doing is figuring out where the money makers are for you, the things you're really good at, and not take any big bites that you're not willing to or ready to chew just yet. Does that make sense?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. So the next question is, how do you compete with, well, maybe let's be more general. And I'll open this one up to the audience here. I'm not going to ask how do you compete with the undercut competition, because the answer may be you don't. So maybe the more general question would be, how do you deal with the undercut competition? The guys that are working, I'm assuming that there's some folks out there who'll say, hey, I'll do this for cash money to make sure they don't pay taxes on it. Is that what's happening?
Right. And I'm assuming, like, I've only maybe heard it like once or twice, but I've been told by some people, they say the only way somebody wouldn't take your price, based on what you gave me, is if they're paying somebody under the table.
Gotcha. So here's a question for the Construction Leading Edge audience. If you've dealt with this, if you've dealt with undercut competition, what have you done? What are your strategies? Um, are you pointing this out to customers? Like, is it a matter of educating your customers about the downside of doing that? Is it, I don't know, what is it? So David, have you figured out anything that that has worked for you, or kind of what's your approach right now?
The only, the only real thing is kind of what you already alluded to is, find the market that won't go for that type of business or provider anyway, um, and go for that. I mean, really, that's other than that. I mean, somebody's going to come in at a cash offer. I mean, there's no way I can beat it.
Right.
So
And you
I
don't
mean,
want to.
right.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. So you've got a group of construction business owners and leaders and managers listening here, just anxious to help you out, answer your questions. What's another question that you need help with, or something you're thinking about with your business?
I am trying. I am trying to think. Really, believe it or not, that was the only thing that was on the tip of my tongue. I'm not claiming that I know it all because I know I surely don't. Um, but that was really the main thing I could think of is how to corner that market and make money. I did have another one.
Okay.
It's kind of a tax question. Um, I've thought of basic things that you can use. I guess the right way to word it is you're able to write off, on your taxes, or things you can use for business purposes. Um, so maybe some other things that other guys use. I'm thinking. I guess I'm thinking like your cell phone I use for business, internet use for business. Things like that. What are some things you use for your business for that purpose?
Yeah. So what are some tax strategies? I know there are ways, especially for sole proprietors, there are some ways to do that, to either minimize the amount of Social Security you have to pay, minimize matching taxes, things like that. So if you're a sole proprietor in David's situation and you figured some stuff out, or you have some resources you can share on tax strategies for somebody in his situation, please post that. If it's an article, or if you could post a link, that's great. Or if you just have some things that you figured out, just feel free to drop that in the comments as well. Anything else, David? What else can we help you with?
Those were really the two main things. Um, I think I've gotten better at being more economical with my materials. I know, or I've heard that a lot of guys, say for example, will toss their roller covers. Say after each job. I've even heard after each coat. I don't do that. I take mine home, rinse them out. I use all the stuff as long as I can. And that it looks good. I'm not gonna put a junky finish on the walls. So I'm learning how to be more economical in those areas, and I've noticed it pays off. When you're not paying $10 a day for a roller cover and you're on a job for 6 days, I mean, those little things start to add up. If other guys, had input on other ways they save, ways they save money, on materials and things like that, that would help also.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you're a painting contractor, or you've got some tips on anything to save on cost, labor, any tips you've got on productivity for painters, hey, throw that into the conversation as well. I'm sure David will be interested in it, and probably some other folks too.
Yeah, and I don't hope I don't come off sounding like a cheapskate. I don't mind to spend money where money needs to be spent, but if there's ways to, if there's ways to save, then use that money for something else. That's what I'm going to do, as long as I can think about it.
Right on. Avoid all the unnecessary expenses.
Yes.
Gotcha. So if people want to get in touch with you, David, where can they reach you on the interwebs, whether that's Facebook, you have a website, email address you want to give out, Twitter? what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. The best way is really my Facebook page. I have Twitter and Instagram. Honestly, I really don't check them a lot. Most of the stuff comes through Facebook. So the Facebook page is RollTheLex Painting. So it's RollTheLex, and that's all together. And then painting. And it is a picture of a not so bearded me. I got a backwards baseball cap, and my 3-year-old daughter is riding on my back like a piggyback ride. So you can't miss it.
Definitely. Yeah, you guys need to check out the Facebook page. David does a good job of, obviously he's doing a good job with the reviews, does a good job of sharing what he's up to. And I think you also do a good job of having your personality into your work. And I think people like that. That's one thing I've found is there's a lot of contractors think that customers want to deal with robots, or it's all professional, and they don't want to hear your personality. But I think the reality is homeowners want to deal with people who have a personality, and if all things are equal, they'd rather deal with somebody who's fun and interesting and has a personality than somebody who doesn't. So one consistent bit of feedback I've heard from people in marketing and advertising is inject your personality into your brand. And I think you've done a good job of that, David. So I would encourage everybody to check that out. I'll have a link in the show notes to David's page, as well as to my Facebook page, where we're looking forward to hearing your comments and seeing what you've got to help David out with as well. So Mr. King, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and let me know if there's anything I could do for you in the future, buddy.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. I appreciate it.
All right. Now, if you have some advice for David, if you want to jump in and help him with those challenges that he's facing, or if you have a question for him, here's where you go. I want you to go to the Construction Leading Edge Facebook page and jump in on the conversation. It's over at facebook.com/Construction Leading Edge. All spelled out, no dots, no dashes. Facebook.com, Construction Leading Edge. Or if you want to go to the link, if you want to get the link, just go to constructionleadingedge.com/045. That's where the show notes will be, and you can just click on the link, and it'll take you straight to the Facebook page where this conversation is. So if you have questions for David, or you want to help him out with the challenges that he's facing, jump into the conversation over on the Facebook page. And don't forget to download the 41 mistakes that you need to avoid when dealing with conflict. You can do that over at constructionleadingedge.com/mistakes. And the last thing, if you want to join the Construction Leading Edge Nation and get in on the early action, find out what's going on behind the scenes, get emails from me that'll help you out, you can do that by going to the homepage, constructionleadingedge.com, and click on the green button that says Join the Construction Leading Edge Nation. That is it for now. Thanks for listening. My name is Todd DeWalt, and I will see you next time. Thanks.